Charanjit Singh Channi, a Dalit Sikh and the outgoing technical education minister, will be Punjab's new chief minister. He will be sworn in today at 11 a.m. Now, the Congress's choice for chief minister is key given next year's polls and the fact that Dalits are around 31% of Punjab's population. The poll calculus behind the choice of Charanjit Channi appears simple. The Akali Dal, which was earlier in power with the BJP, has joined hands with Mayawati's Bahujan Samaj Party to tap the Dalit votes. So Mr. Channi, as a Dalit and Sikh chief minister, the Congress hopes will counter that. Here are visuals of him this morning visiting a Gurudwara ahead of his swearing in as the chief minister of Punjab. Well, let's go across to Sunil Prabhu now for more. And Sunil, after all the controversy and, the infighting that was very apparent in the days running up to this, finally this choice of Charanjit Singh Channi, and he will be sworn in at 11 today. And hopefully things in the Congress in Punjab will settle after this?
I doubt very much because you can really see Gargi,
right.
For example, Sunil Jakar, unhappy that he lost out in the entire race, not ready to be deputy chief minister. There are going to be two deputy chief ministers.
Yes.
There's an uneasy calm at this stage. And it's in that backdrop we'll now have to wait and watch to see whether this gamble that the Congress party has done by appointing Mr. Charanjit Singh and trying to ensure that with Mr. Sidhu they work together and take all factions along, all sections of the society 5 months ahead of elections. So this is something that will have to be factored in. We'll need to factor in the fact that Captain Amarinder is upset. He's licking his wounds. He's an old soldier. And though he says at present time in the Congress party, there's a possibility of him forming his own political party ahead of the assembly elections. Having said that, there are other factions who are upset. So how will Mr. Charanjit Singh Channi as well as Navjot Singh Sidhu and the Congress leadership take all sections ahead of that crucial assembly polls that are due early next year is going to be anybody's guess, but definitely a lot of work that is required at this stage to see that all work together unitedly if they are going to make an impact and take on the BJPs and the BSP and the Akalis as well as the Aam Aadmi party in the state.
Right, Sunil, this has also raised questions about Congress chief ministers in other states. What are you hearing on that front?
Well, there's an uneasy calm, as I said, even there. In fact, in Rajasthan, you're well aware that Sachin Pilot has been waiting. And he's been waiting for a very, very long time because his supporters who have been by him, who stood by him, are waiting to be accommodated, which Mr. Gehlot hasn't done. And it's been long pending. An assurance was given by no less than Mr. Ajay Makkan, who's one of the observers here, as well as Priyanka Gandhi Vadra, but that hasn't happened. And Mr. Ashok Gehlot, in his own way, is resisting that change because he feels that at that when Sachin Pilot did what he did, he was doing a move towards the BJP, and that's the reason why there's that entire faction fighting that is taking place. In the other state, where they are in power, and again it's in a mess. Mr. T.S. Singh Deo has sought his 2.5 years, and no less than Mr. Bhupesh Baghel said that Rahul Gandhi is expected to come, and then a decision will be taken about how things are in the state, and they'll go forward. So there is definitely a sense of uneasy calm, and these are only states in which they are power. The rest, there's huge infighting. And I think somewhere down the line, the Congress needs to understand that they need to work together, get all people on board. If they have to take on the BJP-led NDA across the country. Now, as you're well aware, in the next assembly elections, Uttarakhand, again, the Congress has a huge issue there, fighting against the BJP, and they need to get things together. And like that, state after state, Uttar Pradesh, where you're seeing recently Priyanka Gandhi Vadra finally going out to meet people in Raebareli, and it's in that context that they will have to really pull up their socks. It's a little bit too late in that state, but nevertheless, the Congress is trying to put up a brave front in a four-cornered contest.
Right, Sunil, you spoke about how the choice of Charanjit Singh Channi will not settle the issues that they have in the Punjab Congress. But for the moment, all Congress leaders are really playing this as a master stroke, given that he's Dalit and first Dalit Chief Minister being announced by the Congress.
Yeah, so that's symbolism, and that's absolutely right. It's in a state where has never seen somebody from the scheduled castes being appointed. It's definitely a big step forward, and definitely they are using this as an opportunity to show that the Congress stands by the by the scheduled caste community. So we'll have to wait and see whether this works. As I said, depends on the kind of chemistry Mr. Charanjit Singh Channi has with Mr. Navjot Singh Sidhu, with other factional leaders, Mr. Sunil Jakar, for example, various other leaders who are in the fray, and takes all of them together to fight unitedly to take into account the fact that Captain Amarinder, who has been one of the Congress's biggest leaders in the recent past, had been ousted. So whether Rahul Gandhi is able to succeed in this exercise, much will depend, Gargi, on how all these factions work together in the months to come ahead of that assembly elections which are due early next year.